Welcome to our LinkedIn Live today. Joshua Templeton. I head up strategy delivery and ultimately impact for AceUp, leading provider of AI and human-led coaching. We are here today at LinkedIn Live to talk about coaching at the speed of change and how our organizations scaling not just human-centered growth with AI, but how are they doing it and impacting their people. So I'm joined here today by Dave Smolski, who actually has an unbelievably important role as he looks after L&D for Wiley Publishing. I'm also joined by Rohit Begani, Chief Technology Officer at AceUp. And the goal of our time together today is really to dig into how are organizations using AI coaching and what are some of the opportunities that these organizations have to leverage AI in the flow of work. But before we dove in, Dave, I'd love to maybe start off with you, just a little bit about you, your background, and more importantly, the role that you have within Wiley.
Great. Thanks so much, Joshua. Appreciate it. So I look after learning and development at Wiley. And for those of you who might not know of us, Wiley's been around for more than 200 years. Um, I'd like to think that we've done that by staying curious, future focused, not just kind of resting on the laurels of what got us here.
Mm,
We're a global company, and so we focus on things like scientific discovery and innovation and learning. And we're really very interested in the AI space. And you put all that stuff together, we are helping to support people who are like individual researchers. It could be, Fortune 500 R&D teams, everything in between. And if you know a little bit about Wiley, our purpose is really to transform knowledge into impact. And if I try to translate that into my L&D role in my L&D world, to me it means equipping people with what they need to grow and adapt and lead through the constant change that the world, kind of throws at people these days. And personally, my purpose in and out of work, it's pretty simple. It's just to be the best version of myself
mm,
so I can help others become the best versions of themselves. And I think that's kind of what drew me to L&D.
mm.
It's also why I'm pursuing a professional certification in coaching. And you put all that in the mixing bowl, it makes me really excited for our conversation today.
I love that. And I love the background around not only a steward, but this idea of, and I love the analogy of the mixing bowl, right? As you think about all the different pieces that come together to really drive transformation. Rohit, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the team and what you do for AceUp as the organization.
Yeah. Thank you, Joshua. So I'm Rohit. I lead the product and AI for AceUp. And what we do at AceUp is we deliver human-led and AI-powered coaching at scale. Something that I've been spending a lot of my time thinking about is how can we make AI truly trustworthy and genuinely useful
Mm,
for leaders in the moments that matter, securely and contextually, especially knowing how organizations are looking to scale it while still maintaining the core humanity in it. And that's really why I'm very happy and excited to be here to talk more about it and hear from both of you and your perspectives, Dave and Joshua.
I love the comment you made around the humanity of AI. And Dave, you just mentioned even in the beginning, right? This idea that Wiley really is all about transforming knowledge into impact. So I immediately see some really interesting synergies between what you both are working on in your respective organizations. So let me kind of set the stage for us today. So leaders right now are being asked now more than ever to move faster. They are asking to support more people than they've ever supported before. And we now need our people to grow in really complex environments. The challenge is that many of the development models that exist today have not been able to keep pace. Many of the tools that exist out there have not actually been able to catch up to the needs of these organizations. And so for today, what I am excited about are really maybe three key areas that we can focus in on. Number one is I want to think about the strategic. When you think about this idea of Wiley's vision for coaching and the Wiley way, and I'd love to learn more about, Dave, what you and your team are doing across this organization that's working with so many critical parts of, candidly, our global ecosystem. The second piece I'd love to spend some time on today is this idea of what's working and what isn't, like those early signals. If you were to turn on AI, what does it actually do? Right? We know so many amazing and powerful tools, OpenAI, ChatGPT, Gemini, these powerful transformation tools that are very universal right now. But what actually happens in this idea of AI coaching? And then last but not least is this idea of ROI, impact, and scale. So there's this really interesting thought that I love to put in front of you, which is, and Dave, you've shared this in the past, which is what happens when you dream big. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to spend some time there. So I'd love to dive in. And what I'd love to talk about, Dave, first is I'd love for you to share with us your vision for coaching at Wiley. And what does great coaching actually look like in practice for your organization?
It's a good question. Um, our vision for coaching at Wiley ultimately is that every Wiley leader receives the coaching support and develops their own coaching skills.
Mm.
And that's to help accelerate growth and enhance performance. And if you think about it, it's really like amplifying their impact in the business and within our culture.
Mm,
And I think I said every Wiley leader. That's not just the executives. It's not just the, high potentials. Our leadership model at Wiley, it's based on the Leadership Challenge, which happens to be a Wiley brand. And it says that anyone at any level has the capacity to lead.
mm,
So coaching can't just be reserved for people with certain titles at certain levels. If we truly believe that leadership is for everyone, then I think coaching support should be as well. And at the heart of our approach, it's really a fundamental belief. People are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, and we have unlimited potential. And I don't think that's just nice language, in a PowerPoint deck somewhere. It really shapes, how we approach not only coaching but development as well. Um, and in the coaching space, we're not out to fix people. We're not out to tell people what to do. We're trying to create conditions for them to discover their own answers and, unlock what's already there. And so great coaching at Wiley, it's discovery driven, it's development focused, and ultimately it's results oriented. And I think we've done pretty well historically supporting like our senior, levels of leaders with coaching. And now is that pivot point where we need to scale.
mm.
We need to support and reach managers at all levels and do it in a way that fits into the flow of work. It can't just be something that's, a side trip. It needs to be really integrated in what they're doing and how they're contributing. And if, I think about all of Wiley, we've got about 5,000 folks globally, and we can't really provide one-to-one professional human coaching to everyone, but we also can't afford to leave managers without the support they need. And I think ultimately, that's kind of the crux of what we're working to solve.
What I love about what you just said, and Rohit, immediately my mind goes to the product. And I say that because Dave just mentioned two things really important that jumps out at me. Number one is this idea of development at scale. And then the second piece is this idea of an integrated offering, an integrated experience. And
Mhm.
organizations we know historically, they do want to provide tools, resources, elements like coaching. So from a product perspective, how do you think about AI that is actually designed to support coaching at scale?
Mm. It's a good question. And I love what you were saying, Dave, especially about supporting the individuals. You're not looking to prescribe them the right recipe or the task that they need to take. You want to support them so they can find the right path. And I would say, admittedly, that's probably one of the big design challenges while developing an AI product. Because typically, I would think of an AI solution as a map. So an AI solution understands your starting point, your final goal, and it finds the shortest path to help you get there. It's a map. But a map assumes that the terrain is static. And that's not how leadership works. Because in leadership, it's ambiguous. There are real humans, there are interpersonal dynamics. The terrain shifts all the time. So you can't really have a static path, which you just quickly give as a result. And that's why when we are designing Ally, we thought of it as a compass. And the compass needs to help the leader, the individual, orient themselves in the ecosystem they are in. And the compass always points north. And the north point is the culture of the organization. So the Wiley way, Dave, in your situation. What is that environment that they're working in? And what should they always be pointing at? That's really how we create an AI that supports them instead of prescribing steps for them. So that has been an important element for us. Now, the second part that you mentioned, Dave, is the one-on-one coaching part, right? And that's not something that's necessarily scalable. But and what I would also add is development and training has historically been event driven or episodic, if that makes
Mm.
sense. So you would go to a workshop, you would have an amazing coaching session, you would come out very, buzzing because you had a big breakthrough. And then next day starts, and suddenly you have a packed email inbox, you have something happening in your organization, you have a call coming up, everything is out of the window. You forget everything you learned yesterday. So you had all of that intent, but it never really manifests into action. And this is where also the AI and Ally, the product we have developed for us, is very important because people go through these challenges in real life all the time. So the solution needs to be available continuously and all the time when they need it. So those are really the two parts, which I would say is where it has been important and how we think of the design standards for Ally, making sure it's the compass, so it helps orient them. And second, making sure it's continuous. So it supports them whenever, wherever they need it in the flow of work.
So you bring up a couple interesting points, Rohit. You talk about Ally as a map, and you've got this terrain and
Ally as a compass.
as a compass, excuse me. And Ally is a compass that helps you understand where you're going from point A to point B. And one of the things that, if I'm in the shoes of the many right now that are evaluating all of these different AI tools, and let's, I think, amongst us and even for those that are listening, I think about all of the AI solutions that are being presented to organizations. And it's unlike anything I can remember in the past, probably 25 plus years,
Mhm.
from the advent of moving from PCs to software. I haven't seen this type of, we'll call it speed of opportunity, speed of tools. And organizations are having to sift through, okay, well, what tools do I need for what? And what resonated as you were saying this is Dave's talking about this idea of we need to develop anyone that, everyone at Wiley is a leader. They have the potential to be a leader. And you're talking about what if they had a compass in their hand to help them in that moment of being a leader. And Dave, what that kind of prompts for me is as you think about your experiences with AI coaching, I think one of the most basic questions that most people want to get their head around is they're used to these large language model systems. I ask it a question, it gives me an answer. I have a situation, it responds back brilliantly. Great. What is AI coaching? And you've actually turned it on. You've actually started to activate and use it. And
Mm.
I'd love maybe for you to walk us through what actually happened when you turn on AI coaching at Wiley, and what are you starting to already see in terms of the experience?
I'd like to say, oh, it's like going from like black and white TV to Technicolor. I don't know if it's that dramatic,
Yeah.
but I was explaining to one of my neighbors this week. We were, this came up in conversation, AI, and she she's a little like averse to it. Like, I don't know
Mm,
about this. This doesn't feel too good. And I was explaining to her that every day that I show up at work, and even when I'm not working, I might it could be after hours. I've got like different AI arrows in my quiver. And so I'll pull out one arrow for a particular thing I'm trying to accomplish. And that tool served its purpose. And I'll pull out a different one for, something else I'm trying to accomplish. And now I can pull out Ally, the AI coach for a different purpose for coaching. And it's kind of like, if I'm going out to my garage and I'm working on a project, I'm not going to use a hammer for everything I have to do. I might need a screwdriver, a wrench, et cetera, et cetera. So, when we turned it on, we've we're in the early stages. I'm going to just be honest about that, for the audience. We've got about 250 plus people who are using it now. Um, I see that growing to, 1,000 plus by the end of the calendar year, which is exciting. That's, you know, around 20% of our population, which is pretty cool. Um, and so while we're piloting it in different pockets, what I've also seen to be really, really cool is when we've used it to augment, things like the programs that Rohit was mentioning, like, hey, events and trainings and things like that. Yeah, like that's been the bread and butter for so long in the L&D space. Um, and right now the one that's just coming to my mind here is we've got a program called Managing at Wiley. It's like a manager fundamentals type of program. Not rocket science, it's kind of the basics. It's a cohort-based experience, and we have a series of facilitated modules on just some core management skills. And one thing that we've just heard loud and clear from our learners at Wiley is that they value sharing with and learning from each other.
Mm,
And so we wanted to create these opportunities for, our participants to connect and support each other between the facilitated sessions. And the challenge, again, very similar to what was offered, is people are in the moment. They go through this amazing learning experience, and then they come back into the real world and they've got to dig out from the time they spent learning. Um, and we that when they get kind of like sucked back into the vortex of the day to day,
Yeah.
that's when I think some of those learning insights might have a tendency to like dim or fade.
mm,
And that's a little bit of the gap that I've seen with our team with managing at Wiley. You know, if I'm going to put myself in the shoes of a participant, I learned something valuable,
mhm.
but am I really consistently applying that in my real world situation? And we needed something to help people connect the dots to continue to build into their daily repertoire those behaviors that they were being exposed to. And so I've seen, certainly we've piloted in different areas, but when we've used Ally as an AI coaching partner to augment the learning experience, that's where I feel like the excitement's starting to happen. It's like the water's starting to boil, it's starting to get exciting.
So I want to ask a quick follow on, Dave, because you're talking about connecting the dots and
Hmm.
you're talking about in the flow of work.
Mm.
One of the things that always jumps out at me with any tool that you might use, especially when it comes to AI, is this idea of vulnerability and authenticity. Because what you're really talking about when you're talking about these leaders and you're talking about what they're going through,
Hmm.
they need to be authentic. They need to actually put out there what it is that they're working on. No different than if they were talking to a human coach. And I'm just curious, as you think about that, these real moments, genuinely, do you think that or see that your people are having that level of authenticity and candor, or maybe they reacting differently as they think about, right, this new tool, this new solution? I'd be curious your perspective on what you're hearing and seeing from your people on that front.
Yeah, I guess I'll just be really frank. AI is a priority for Wiley. So
Yeah,
a lot of folks are leaning in, and I think that that's very helpful.
yeah.
As a company in our culture, we see how it's adding value and helping further our business. And so I'd like to think there's this like natural curiosity. And by the way, that natural curiosity, I think, is what's carried us through, hundreds of years as an organization. Um, and if I think specifically to, what Ally offers the learner or the coachee or the client or whatever we want to, whatever
Mhm.
terminology we want to use, Um, I feel like it's kind of like a safe space, like a nice sandbox where
Mm,
my son's a basketball player. I'm going from sandbox to basketball. You know, if he's in an empty gym by himself practicing his free throws and there's no crowd around, he can just focus on the mechanics and the form and the ball going through the hoop again and again and again. He doesn't have to like perform for anybody, impress anybody, worry about the crowd. All that is not present. And I think that's something special that Ally can bring to the learner.
mm,
If I'm getting ready, I've got some anxiety about a difficult or challenging conversation. I don't really have the luxury of having that conversation live with the person and say like, "Hey, can we just pause here and rewind the tape and I want a mulligan. Can we get a redo here?" Um, I can do that with Ally. I can practice, and I'm hearing from people. I heard from somebody in Australia just this week. That's what she values most, going into Ally and role playing. It might be a
mm.
challenging conversation with a stakeholder. It might be getting some feedback on the approach that she took in that kind of a role play. It gets people to start being reflective and introspective and not I personally I feel like, you know what, if I get an opportunity to practice, it lessens my nerves when it's showtime I need to make it happen.
Yeah. What I love about what you're saying here is, and just absolutely resonated the visual of I'm out on the court and I just get to practice and I'm unencumbered. When you think about Rohit, what Dave is saying, what he's really talking about, right, is this idea of safety,
Mhm.
governance. And you even mentioned it at the outset. There's so many different scenarios, right, where people are really trying to get their arms around that idea of safety and governance, especially as you think about AI. When you and the team decided that Ally needed to be the tool to drive that change, how did you think about governance and the psychological safety? Like, I think it's a big question that honestly people are really grappling with it. And I'd love to just understand, like, how do you think about it in context of how you build Ally?
Yeah, I like that question. And, you know, maybe I'll go back to something you said, Dave. Dave, you were saying you have a neighbor who is not really, let's say, sold on this idea of AI, right? To me, what I hear is that it eventually comes to trust, right? Does she trust the AI to support her?
Hmm.
Does she trust the AI to actually be valuable? So even when I think of safety and governance, to me, it all kind of boils down to trust. Does the IT team trust it? Do the users trust it? Do you, as the L&D leader, Dave, trust it? Right? That's really the important part. So to ensure that we create that trust, there are really two parts of it, right? One is the technical trust, which is what I was saying, the IT teams and so on. So, you know, SOC 2, GDPR compliance, guardrails, safeties. At an enterprise level, this is just foundational, table stakes. It must exist. But I would say what's the harder, more difficult problem is the user trust. And there are a few different elements to it, and that's which leads to psychological safety. I love the example you used, Dave, about your son playing basketball and practicing in an empty court, right? And he can be very unencumbered, let's say. And there's an idea behind it. It's called the panoptic effect, which is based on this experiment where they looked at they were in a prison and they mentioned to the prisoners that they may be observed at any time. And just this idea of telling them that they may be observed at any time led them to actually self-correct and self-behave, self-regulate in a specific manner. So this is really one of the big challenges that we have with an AI system, first of all. An individual can have the concern that if I engage with Ally, if I role play with Ally about a difficult conversation, will my manager learn that,
Mm,
oh, maybe I'm not very confident? Will my peer learn that I'm actually talking about this specific thing? And that part is very important. And that's where I love, again, the sandbox analogy as well, because that's how we think of Ally. Ally is a sandbox for you. You work in there, everything that happens, that's personal to you. Your manager doesn't learn. So you get the chance to try out things, to fail, to fall on your face, but in a safe, secure environment. So that's the first most important thing, how you can do it in a trustworthy way so that the individuals know that it's not going to be shared. And this needs to be explicitly clear to them. So that's the first one. I think the second part I would add there is, and this is something unique, I would say, that's happening in the coding or engineering space right now. With LLMs, with AIs, you almost use philosophy as code, if that makes sense. And that's really odd because that's not really how engineering used to work. But because LLMs work on language, so you are trying to tell them a specific philosophy that they need to adhere to. So for us, we give them guidance on what the Wiley way is at the front end, so they understand this is the direction they need to go to. But also on the back end, we need to set up restraints. And those restraints are very, very important because at a foundational level, an LLM is unencumbered in many ways. So we restrain it so that it never actually overrides your judgment. We restrain it so it will actually never try to give you or prescribe you a specific solution. We restrain it so it doesn't jump to an answer and it always asks you a question. And sometimes that can lead to a bit more, let's say, pain for the user because it's not giving you an immediate answer, it's taking you through a journey. But that is so important for two reasons. One, actually to help them learn something new. And second, what we have seen in the data is it actually helps build trust because now they're not really seeing Ally just giving them a quick answer. And the question for them is, wait, do I agree or not? That's not what's happening at all. Ally is asking them a question. Ally is guiding them towards specific Wiley frameworks, which are related to the Wiley way. So they are actually hearing what they already hear, and they're able to come up with their own judgment. And then Ally will come back later and check in and see how it's going. So I think those are the parts which are very important for me as we continue bringing Ally at scale.
Could I build on that, Rohit? Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Or I should probably ask Joshua. Is that okay?
I would love it. I would love it.
When we were going through the whole RFP process to figure out what partner we wanted to work with, it was so important to learn that Ally understood and the parameters were congruent with ICF, International
Mm.
Coaching Federation. Those guidelines were super important. It wasn't just like using the LLMs out there. And we've done work, we've partnered, myself and you guys, to provide Ally with that Wiley context. Ally understands, well, what is Wiley's strategy?
Mhm.
What are expected Wiley way behaviors? What are fiscal year priorities? It has that context so it can bring that into the conversations. So that's like mission critical here.
You know, what I appreciate about what both of you have gotten to, right, as you talk about this idea of you have to have a tool that people feel safe in using. And you said something, Rohit, that really resonated with me, which was you said, if you give a quick answer, you actually are unintentionally eroding trust.
Mhm.
When you have a thoughtful response and you actually have a moment of inflection and then a reply, you're building trust. And what's interesting is the point that you made there is that's actually what a coach would do. That's
Mhm.
also what a leader would do. Dave, as you talk about, everybody has the opportunity to truly be a leader within Wiley. Rohit, what you're saying is you and the team at AceUp have built a solution that really is a coaching solution for the many. That's exciting because, I agree with you. There are some amazing tools that exist out there, but they're amazing for very specific things. And so what you've identified here is this ability to provide coaching truly in the flow of work. And I think that maybe takes me to a question that I would want to put in front of both of you. And Dave, I'll start off with you, which is what if you were to dream big? What if you said, okay, I know where we're at today, and I know what we're doing today. The question I'd ask of you, and then I'll come to you, Rohit, in a moment, is if you were to dream big, thinking about AI and the ability that it has, and you even mentioned, right, AI is a priority for Wiley. What's possible for Wiley?
Yeah, so I mean, this is like the shoot for the moon question, right? I think if everybody at Wiley, 5,000 folks had access to Ally, I really do think it would be transformational. And I feel like that word itself is probably overused now, but I can't think of a better one at this point. But first, we would be living our vision when it comes to coaching. Every Wiley leader receiving that coaching support, developing the coaching skills.
Mm,
And right now that seems very aspirational for 5,000 people. But with Ally at scale, I think it becomes really possible. And leadership development, again, it wouldn't just be reserved for
mm,
certain titles or pockets of the organization. It would be more like for anybody who they decide that they want to do the work and they want to grow. So that's first. Second, I think that the coaching behaviors would really spread more organically. And so when you scale coaching support, you're scaling behaviors. And that to me means that leaders start asking different types of questions. They're probably listening, differently, more deeply. They're creating this natural space for other people to think. And all that boils down to like this cultural shift where I think the real ROI lives. And then third, Wiley's global. We have teams across time zones and cultures and geographies.
mhm,
And with Ally, every leader, whether they're in Hoboken or Singapore or London, they would have access to the same quality support to help them grow and develop. We wouldn't be dependent on local availability or regional coaches and time zones and things like that. With Ally, it's always there and it's always consistent. And
mm,
so, like all that said, I think the biggest shift development stops being like episodic or an event and it becomes really able to be embedded into how we work. You're preparing for that difficult conversation. Well, try Ally. Working through a strategic challenge, maybe try Ally. Um, you want to do a little reflection on what really worked. Okay, you could try Ally. So
mm.
it has the opportunity to kind of become part of the fabric of leadership and not something that's separate that has to be like, found on the side.
Yeah.
So if I can add a thought on that, Joshua, what I really like, Dave, and what you're saying is, and the engineer in me thinks of it as an infrastructure versus the apps on top of the infrastructure. What I'm really hearing is this AI and Ally existing as the infrastructure across the system. So it's always available. So users can tap into it when they need. It always needs to be there. It needs to be reliable. It needs to be available, built on the Wiley competencies.
Hmm.
But what is very important is that when we look at the value that the system is providing as well, it needs to be focused on the impact of the system, because that's the core part which I kind of take out from all of this, which is it's not that is everyone using it every hour or every day. Because to be honest, in growth as well, we don't do it in a cadenced manner. We don't say that I'm going to grow every day. It doesn't really work like that. What happens is there are important moments that come up as you are working, as you're going through your life. And in that moment, you need to be able to tap into something, get something back so that you can have coverage on that gap between the intent and the action. And this is an idea which my coach has kind of shared with me as well, my human coach, about how we have an intent or an impulse, and then there's a gap between converting that intent to an action that manifests itself externally. Often, we as humans, our intent and action can be a bit disconnected because of many different factors. Maybe the mindset we are in, the emotion we are feeling, the ecosystem at that time. So maybe I wanted to be supportive, but because I'm feeling a sense of urgency to drive something, I'm coming up very strongly to a team member. And these are the moments where I want Ally to be available so I can quickly say that and get a reflection back that actually, Rohit, this is something we have worked on. Maybe there's an opportunity to rephrase it. What would you think if this was something that was shared by you to you by your manager and asking me those questions that would help me rethink? So I love this idea of kind of having that infrastructure layer always available across the organization, built on your competency so people can kind of tap into it at the right time.
So I want to ask the same question that I asked to Dave. I want to ask to you, Rohit. If you were to dream big, what would be possible with Ally?
It's a good question. I think what I would say is, when all of us see all of the AI news coming in all of the time, the LLMs, there's a lot of competition on the intelligence of the LLM. So one answer I could give is to say that, oh, Ally would be incredibly intelligent. But to be honest, I don't think that's the most important thing. Because I go back to what I was saying earlier with AI, especially AI in a leadership situation, it needs to be trustworthy. And really, what I strive towards is continuing to create a product environment and AI environment that feels inherently trustworthy to every individual. So when they have the first challenge, they don't hesitate, they immediately go to Ally. And I think this is going to be a continuous journey. And I would say it's not because of just the work we are doing, but because of the ecosystem we all exist in today from a
Mhm.
global perspective. In the world right now, there's a lot of fear around AI. There's a lot of fear about AI maybe misguiding you. There's sometimes fear about AI taking over your job. There's a lot of misconception,
Mhm.
which is being driven because of different goals that, let's say, individuals have based on their roles. And I think for us, this place where we would be able to reach, where I would say, yes, this is an incredible achievement, is where I can see that trust is not really a concern that our users have as they continue engaging with Ally, regardless of the scenario.
I think that's so powerful because, when you think about where do we go to get insight or perspective, right? We go to our trusted friends, our trusted advisors, maybe it's our trusted family members, but there's this knowing and understanding that that trust is going to give you a thoughtful answer, a thoughtful response that's specific to you. And I love what you said around it's not just about the intelligence of the LLM, it's really about its trustworthiness. And I think that people are going to hear that and that's going to resonate. It's going to really hit them in a place of like that actually that does make sense. Because again, the answers are clear. AI answers things very intelligently, very smartly, and it's pulling on all the data that exists out there. But if I know that I have a partner, a partner that I can trust in, I love that idea that it just becomes universal, as you said, Dave, that everybody gets access because they have a trusting partner to work with. Go ahead, Dave. You have a thought.
Sorry, I got so many things going through my head. I use AI in those areas of my quiver every day,
Yeah,
but there have been moments where I've had expectations of some of those tools and they've fallen a little short.
yeah.
Like I need whatever the tool is to create an artifact and it creates it. I'm like, that has nothing to do with the information I provided to you. And then that could be like a trust eroder, right?
Right.
But if I think about like the beauty of coaching, if I'm it doesn't matter if I'm working with a human coach or the AI, component from this perspective. I'm not going to be told what to do, and I need to have some trust in myself because true coaching, pure coaching, it's really helping unlock what's inside of us. And I'm going to come up with my own ideas and what I think are my best solutions. So it's a little bit of a boomerang. It comes back to me. And that's been my experience so far with human professional executive coaches. And it's also been the experience I've had with Ally. And I've tried, like, hey, can you just like shortcut it and tell me what to do? No. I was asked questions and I got to my own solution.
That's
I
amazing.
love that. And I would say maybe a little bit of a strong image, but still I kind of share it, which is there is this risk of individuals letting AI do the thinking for them. And to
Mm,
your point, Dave, we don't really want to become this like almost like a meat puppet to AI, and AI is telling us do this, and we kind of just do that. It doesn't lead to anything. It may lead to some kind of efficient, quick outcome, but over time, I'm actually eroding my own capabilities.
Mhm.
And I absolutely agree. This is where it's critical that AI is our thought partner. It could give us perspectives, it could help research for us, it could execute for us, do the chores. But it's will be very dangerous if we were to create a situation where AI is always prescribing and the users are following. And I think that's an important part for any development solution, same as for a coach. And to your point, it's in the ICF guidelines. That's not how a coach is supposed to work. They should not be telling you what to do.
No. That's exactly the nature of the conversation I had with not my manager, my neighbor
Yeah.
earlier this week. And we were talking about an episode of The Office where Michael Scott, if you know Michael Scott, he's listening to the GPS and it says turn right, and he takes it very literally, like turns into a
In the pod.
pond,
Yeah,
like without any thought.
that's right.
so
That's a great example. Yeah.
I love that. And I think that it's such a great call to action as we just organizational leaders, individuals that are out there that are evaluating the tools that we want our people to use is do you want, as you noted, Rohit, do we want our people to just have a quick shortcut to an answer? Or do we actually want to help them make and understand and align on better decisions, better decision-making processes, better ways of engaging and interacting? Is that really what we're looking for? And what it does is it takes us into, I want to call this the lightning round. So here's my question for you, Dave, and for you, Rohit, in our lightning round. We're wrapping up our time right now, and we've talked about everything from why organizations like Wiley invest so critically into not only coaching, but AI technology. And you called it out. It's a priority for your organization. Rohit, you've spent some time talking about what is Ally? Why did you have this idea and this vision of bringing it to life in the first place? And now we're into really the inner thinking of this idea of a partner, a global partner that can meet, Dave, as you noted, whether you're in Hoboken or Singapore or XYZ location, you have an amazing partner that is trustworthy. If you were to sit down with anyone that's listening to us today, Dave, I'll start with you, and you were to say, I have one thing I want you to take away from today's conversation, what would be the one thing that you would want somebody listening to this amazing conversation take away today?
I think it's stay curious. And, I think back just a couple of short years ago, my two boys thought I would probably be the last person on planet Earth that would lean into AI. And now they know that I use it every day at work and personally. It's just different tools for different purposes. And so, to the audience out there, if you are still maybe in that space and you're a little skeptical about AI coaching, I get it because I walked in your shoes at one point.
Mm,
But I do think curiosity is what kind of moves us forward. So my recommendation is test it, kick the tires on it, see what happens, stay open to it, and you just might be surprised.
I love that. Rohit, everyone's got the opportunity to hear your unbelievable expertise and the vision that you have brought forth with Ally. What would be one thing that you would want anyone listening to this conversation today to take away?
I think I'll be repeating myself, but you will hear me harping about this almost all the time, which is if you are exploring an AI coaching solution, don't start by looking at how intelligent the model is. I'll go back to what I was saying, which is start by asking, is it trustworthy? Does it reinforce your culture? Does it protect the psychological safety? Does it support judgment instead of replacing it? And once you have a solution that is able to do that, you will find the right thing to actually scale it globally. Because intelligence of the model is something that is almost table stakes now, and I would always keep it as that, similar to what we talk about in SOC 2 and so on. That should not be the deciding factor. That is the key to get into the room.
Mhm.
And really, what should be the deciding factor is the trust and the psychological safety. And again, does it reinforce your company's culture? That is the most important part. Because at the end of the day, Dave, I believe that you don't want your employees to be learning from whatever is the internet's aggregated knowledge or even AceUp's opinion. You want them to be learning based on what is the Wiley's culture. And that part is so important. And with AI, we truly have the ability to drive this change way faster than we have ever been able to
Yeah.
because we can do it in the moment. Not in episodic events, as you said, Dave, but in the moment. When I have to have a conversation, it can give me guidance. So that would be my biggest recommendation. Really look for those solutions which are able to custom curate it at the individual level, at the organizational level, and then the team ecosystem.
That's brilliant. Stay curious, start with trustworthy, start with the psychological safety and the culture amplifier, as you noted. I think those are amazing and they're simple. And I think that those that are listening today are going to have some really thoughtful, not only just amazing takeaways from the two of you, but also some very real experiences that they can think about as they look at how do I deploy AI solutions like Ally at scale? So this is what I would want to say in closing, two parts. Number one, Dave and Rohit, thank you so much for just taking the time to really share your experiences, share your journey, the amazing journey that Wiley's been on now for over 200 plus years. Rohit, the journey that you've embarked on with AceUp and Ally and the impact that you're driving. And for those of you that are listening today, here's my call to action, which is if you want to know more about how organizations are scaling AI and AI coaching at scale, we'd love to continue the conversation. And so we'll put our contact information in the link. But thank you again, Rohit and Dave, for such an amazing session. I'm just excited. I even have some amazing takeaways as I go into the weekend and excited for the journey that Dave, you and the Wiley team are embarking on, and Rohit, what you're driving for Ally and all of the amazing customers of AceUp. So thank you both. Wishing you all a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you, Dave and Joshua.